Conference tournament season is upon us, Mr. Jack Sullivan. The week that we have waited for so long is here. It's time to dig into all the Power 5 conference tournaments going on. Mid-majors have already punched their tickets. We'll be doing a video on that later in the week, but we're going to start with the conference that Duke has dominated all regular season long. They're looking poised for a nice run in the ACC tournament. We're going to give our predictions and what we're looking for, any possible storylines throughout that ACC tournament beginning on Tuesday. All right, Mr. Sullivan, we've got the bracket right here. You see it in all of its glory. Duke is the number 1 seed, Louisville is the 2, Clemson is the 3, and Wake Forest is the 4 to round out the top 4. They have those double byes. They won't begin their play until Thursday. But we'll start here in the first round, Sully. Notre Dame and Pitt, Virginia Tech and Cal, FSU and Syracuse. Starting right here with the 12-13 matchup. Notre Dame or Pitt? Take your pick. Who you got?
Man, I really don't know because this probably isn't going to be the best game we'll see throughout the ACC. I'm going to take Pitt, though. I do think they have talent, and they should be much better than they are. I think a 13 seed for them this year is a disastrous season. But I'll take Pitt over Notre Dame, even though Marcus Burton just put up 40 recently.
Yeah, he had a legacy game the other night in that quadruple overtime matchup. That was electric, but I think I'm going to go Pitt as well. We've seen them have some solid performances throughout the year. Not the worst team in the world, but, I mean, they're obviously not the greatest sitting here at 13th in the conference. But like you said, there's some talent on that team that should be able to get them at least one win in the ACC tournament, at least I would think. So moving on down, Virginia Tech, the 10 seed, going up against California, number 15 seed. I am going with Virginia Tech in this one. They were scrappy with Louisville about a week or so ago. They weren't able to finish the job. And this Cal team, I mean, to put it quite frankly, they're not good. I mean, last place in the conference for a reason. I imagine we're probably on the same page here.
Yeah, we're on the same page. I don't think either team is really special, could go on a run here in this. But I'm going to stick with VT. I think they do have a better chance than Cal in this game is what I'll say.
Yep, fair enough. Pretty short and sweet with that one. And then we go on to the 11 versus 14 matchup. This is going to be the final ACC tournament of Leonard Hamilton's career at Florida State, Sully, going up against Syracuse, second to last place in the conference. Do we think the Seminoles work some magic here for a little farewell tour, or is it going to be a one-and-done type of affair in this tournament?
I'm going to actually say they win this game, so they're going to be playing SMU. And then I'm also going to say they're going to beat SMU to play.
Really?
And that's where it ends. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that one here.
It is so weird seeing FSU and Syracuse at 11 and 14 when a couple years ago, like 5+ years ago, when both teams were very solid back then. You had Jim Boeheim. You had those very good Leonard Hamilton teams with the bigs. I can't think of any player off the top of my head right now that fits that those Leonard Hamilton teams. But yeah, this is what the ACC is becoming. It's a sad reality for this conference.
It's definitely a rough outlook. I mean, when you look at these opening rounds and really the second rounds, there's not a whole lot to be inspired by. I mean, hopefully these quarterfinal matchups will make up for it, but we'll move on into the second round that'll be played on Wednesday this week. We'll start right here in the 8-9 game. The winner gets the reward of facing Cooper Flagg and Duke, so that stinks for both of these squads. But Georgia Tech, the 8 seed, Virginia, the 9 seed. How do we think Virginia does in their first ACC tournament without Tony Bennett?
I'm going to be picking Georgia Tech, so that'll tell you how they do. I think Georgia Tech should win this game. And I honestly don't think the Virginia fans and the administrators will be mad if they lost, because then they just start the coaching search immediately. And there's been a lot of names already rumored there. There's been a couple that have been mainly rumored. So, yeah, I think they'd like to get ahead of that now rather than wait and go on a win one game.
Yeah, I'd love to make the case for Virginia here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with Georgia Tech as well. We're really on the same page so far, so it's nice to see here. We got a little bit of agreement across the board.
Give it a couple. We'll see something happen.
You got something up your sleeve for the people coming here in a bit? Or
I do.
What's going on?
I do.
Okay.
I have a couple of things up my sleeve.
Little mid-pod tease. I see what you're doing there, but we'll keep it in the second rounds for now. Pittsburgh, the winner of that Notre Dame Pitt game, they get to take on UNC, who, I mean, Sully, to put quite frankly, this tournament's going to determine whether or not they find themselves in the big dance. They've got a lot of work to do. It's going to take more than just beating Pitt in this game, and probably going to take more than beating Wake Forest in that next matchup if they were to make it there. But do we think that UNC gets this one done? I think they're going to get this one done for sure.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. These two games they've had, or between Pitt and North Carolina, have been dogfights too, which has been very interesting. So they split 1-1. I'm going to take UNC in this one, and I think UNC really got screwed in this bracket. I also want to just put that out there now.
Mm-hmm.
They're the 5 seed. Okay, they beat Pitt. That doesn't help your resume. Okay, then you play Wake Forest. If you beat Wake Forest, doesn't help your resume. You're kind of the ACC being so bad really kind of screwed North Carolina this season.
Yeah, and I guess we'll talk about this a little bit later on, and we can tease it right now. But is it going to take North Carolina winning this whole tournament for them to be in the field, or do we think if they were to hypothetically go on and beat Wake Forest and beat Duke, I'm not saying that's what our picks are going to be, but what's the pathway you think for Hubert Davis to feel comfortable about his team as we head into Selection Sunday, which is just a week from as of today?
I think you have to win it all. I think that's the only thing. You don't have the big wins. You have one good win this year, and it's against UCLA. You're 1-11 against every single high major team that's actually good. And then you've lost games to Stanford at home. You've lost to Pitt. You have to win it all at this point. There's no any way around it. I don't even think beating Duke, if they play Duke again, would steal it. I think win it all and you're safely in, because the bubble sucks this year, and North Carolina is the reason why the bubble sucks, because they themselves are not the best. But I do think them winning it all has to be the only option to get in at this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with that. We'll hit on that here more in a little bit. But moving on down in the second rounds, we got Virginia Tech, our hypothetical winner, against Cal, taking the 7-seed Stanford on. This one, I could see this one being a little bit of a toss-up. I'm curious as to see what way you think this one leans. But I think I know who I'm rolling with in this one, but I do think this will be a pretty close matchup in the second round.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little closer than expected, but I'm going to take Stanford. I like Renault and Jalen Blakes over whatever Virginia Tech has. No disrespect to Toby Mawal. I don't know. I hope I said that right. I've never been able to say his name right, but that kid is a baller.
Like I said, I mean, Virginia Tech, they've shown signs of being scrappy in the performance against Louisville, but I think Stanford's a better team. It'll be a close matchup. I agree with you, though. I think they get it done here. And then we move on down. Florida State, coming off that win against Syracuse in our little bracket here, going up against SMU. SMU, that's another team that's been sitting on the bubble just about the better portion of the last month. I don't think that they have a pathway into the tournament unless they win this whole thing, Sully. So must-win territory if you're an SMU Mustang fan. You think they take care of their business against Florida State?
I do not think they take care of business. I'm taking FSU. This is the first big kind of upset, we'll say. But yeah, I think FSU takes it. I think Jameer Watkins is the answer in this game. And then I think Leonard Hamilton, we've seen this is it. This is his last ride. I think he goes out with a semi-bang, to say the least, which is at least officially eliminating SMU from the tournament and out of their first ever ACC tournament as well.
Yeah, this is the first one that we're really in disagreement over. I think SMU gets it done. So how do we want to settle this tiebreaker? A little bit of live producing here. Do we flip a coin, or should I just give you FSU for the sake of the storylines when it comes to the video?
So I think we should have a trump card. So you can either use it now against my pick, and then you have SMU go on, or you let it stand, and then we can go back and forth. So let's say you choose SMU here, then I have a choice to overtake whatever you put up there.
This isn't the most absurd upset that I could see happening, so I'm going to give you this one. I'm not going to waste a trump card on I'm not going to waste it on them here. I do think that FSU could pull off the upset here. If I had to bet, I would take SMU, but I'll give you this one. I'll say my trump card because I think you may have
FSU's
something up your sleeve. FSU,
FSU, my early big upset in this.
And
I always feel like there's a double-digit seed, especially these last ACC tournaments, that eliminates like one of the bubble teams. And like a double-digit team that's just not in the tournament. That's just Wake Forest is usually the team that always loses to in that situation, which is hilarious. But yeah, I think it'll be SMU who is the unfortunate victim this time.
Yeah, and for SMU too, I mean, they lose this one. They've been on the bad part of the bubble for a while now. This would just put the nail in the coffin. I mean, surely, right?
Yes. Oh, 100%.
Yeah. There's probably no way to reconcile this season for SMU unless they went on and won this whole thing. They had some quad one opportunities. I remember a couple weeks back we were talking about them getting Clemson. We thought that might be a chance for them, and they whiffed on that. So they've dug themselves too much of a hole. They're in a deeper hole than Carolina is, to be honest with you here. But that'll round out the second round of our bracket portion here for the ACC. Moving on to the quarters. This is where things could start to get interesting for this conference. It's really been kind of underwhelming on the whole this year. It's been the Duke, Louisville, and Clemson show, and those are the teams that are going to be in action on Thursday in the quarters, starting with Duke at noon, the overall number one seed in the ACC, the outright ACC champions. They just clinched that with the win against UNC this weekend. Do we think Georgia Tech gives them any sort of trouble, or is this going to be Duke doing what Duke does? Because I'll just tell you right now, Sully, I don't envision Duke having any challenges until they get to probably the championship game, truthfully.
Yeah, no, Duke might win by 45 plus points, and I would honestly bet that too. I don't think there should be a debate. I think they're the much better team than Georgia Tech by a lot. And yeah, we can just move to the next game because that's probably how it's going to go. We'll see, though.
Yep, easy as that. Wake Forest, UNC, and the 4-5 matchup to follow this one up if UNC takes care of business against our other hypothetical winner, Pitt. This one could be interesting. I mean, Hunter Salas versus RJ Davis, that's going to be a matchup to look for. These are both teams that are fighting for their tournament lives. This one could be a little bit spicy there in the 2:30 slot on Thursday, Jack.
So yeah, this is probably going to be the most important game, I'd say, of the quarterfinals, in my opinion, if this hypothetical matchup becomes a reality. But both teams are on the bubble. They're win or not get in. Win to like keep your hopes alive. Lose, it's over with. And yeah, I'm going to take UNC though. I think UNC keeps their hopes alive. Wake Forest, Hunter Salas, and the team can't get it done. To UNC, desperate UNC at this point.
I'm going with UNC as well, even though they are desperate. You'll go ahead.
And this sets up a very, very big game again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a big time matchup there in the semifinal. I know the heads at the ACC probably want to see that one happen, but yeah, I'm going with UNC. I'm going with UNC in that spot. I think the road ends there for Wake Forest. Bubble is probably going to be popped with that one too. Going to take a run. I mean, for all these bubble teams in the ACC, really, it's going to take a run for them to feel good about themselves going into Selection Sunday. But UNC, on the whole, just has more talent to compete with Wake Forest. RJ Davis, I mean, if he has the kind of performance that he had against Duke there for a little bit, they could go on a heater type of run and maybe make some noise in this tournament. But yeah, we'll keep it short and simple with that. UNC sets up the possible rivalry rematch for the third time in the ACC tournament, which would definitely bring all the headlines. Sully, this one's probably going to be a quick pick, I would imagine. Louisville versus Stanford. I'm going with the Cards here.
Yep, no debate.
No debate. Yeah,
I think. I think they are the better team than Stanford by a lot.
No, 100%. Yeah, the Revival's going to keep on trucking in that one. Now, here's your Cinderella pick, Florida State. They're going into a matchup here in this situation against the 3-seeded Clemson Tigers, 9:30 to cap off the Thursday action. Do we think that Leonard Hamilton pulls off another upset, or is the road going to end there?
The road ends here, unfortunately, for Leonard Hamilton, who had a great carear. But yeah, I think actually I do think it's going to be close for a while. I think they'll give Clemson a little game.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm glad I didn't have to use a trump card here because I did not see the vision for this upset.
Oh, best of luck. You might be coming up.
I'll keep that in mind. We'll get on to the semifinals here. Duke, UNC, the sport's greatest rivalry and a possible matchup in the semis. UNC playing for their tournament lives. Sully, what happens in this third time around if this matchup comes to fruition?
Give me that Tar Heels.
I,
Give me the
I
Tar Heels.
figured you had that up your sleeve.
It's the third round. My big thing
Mm-hmm.
with college basketball, it's very hard to beat a team 3 times, especially your biggest rival, a desperate North Carolina team. I mean, I think it's a very, 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 very good pick to take UNC here. And I think RJ Davis, we saw what he could do. He got hot. I think there's a good chance he can replicate that as well. And I don't think Malik Brown's going to be hitting dagger threes on them this time around. So, yeah, give me the Tar Heels. I'm taking him. I took him twice now betting. We're taking him for sure here. That's all that matters.
I feel like I might have to pull the trump card here, Sully. I hate to do it to you. I love the argument that you've presented 3 times around. It always makes it hard, but I mean, this Duke team, they're just on another level, in my opinion. And I think that it will be a close matchup if this is what we get in the semifinals. I'm hoping this is what we get, but I'm just going to have to put a stop right there because I think that Duke is playing arguably like the best team in college basketball right now with Auburn's slip-ups. I think Florida is right up there with them. When we talk about the SEC, we're going to be talking about them. Better believe that because I've been super high on that team since the preseason. But yeah, no, I love the storylines. Trust me. I honestly, I would like to see UNC get that one done in the semifinals just for the pure chaos. But I'm just trying to think about what I think is most realistic here. So I'm going to pencil in Duke. But hey, I hope for your gambling purposes and for just the absolute cinematic purposes that one comes to fruition. And your argument is pretty valid for it. I see the vision, but I just can't bet against Duke right now. But
Okay,
you
if
got
Duke
anything that could
wins,
sway my mind? I'll let you talk a little bit more on this one.
I have one big question. I don't think I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to sway your mind. That's kind of my main argument. Was the
Uh-huh.
very hard to beat a team 3 times, especially when it's your rival or it's a good team. But
Yep.
if Duke wins like this game, that's this hypothetical game, of course. Would you like what would you like feel as a UNC fan? Not neither of us are UNC fans, so we can't like.
Yeah.
But like, would your like faith in the program be at an all time low at this point, especially with Hubert Davis at the helm?
So you're saying if UNC wins this one?
If they lose, if Duke
Oh, if
wins,
they lose, sorry, I misheard you.
yeah,
Yeah, if Duke performs the sweep here across the board with one of them coming in the ACC tournament, I think that's a pretty critical morale blow. I mean, you look at this season as a whole, what they were expected to be, what we thought they could be. I mean, back in November, we saw that classic between them and Kansas, and those two teams just went way downhill from there. It's very hard if you get just clean sweep by your bitter rival to feel like you've got hope in Hubert moving forward. The only thing I could point to if I'm a Carolina fan is Caleb Wilson next year being the savior. And if they go in the portal and get some guys fill that big man hole they've had all year. But yeah, I think UNC stock would be below the floor if they lose this one.
okay, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, what would you feel though? What would you think about that if you were a UNC fan?
If I'm a UNC fan, it's probably like get Hubert Davis out. We gotta hire a new guy. But the problem is I don't know who UNC is gonna hire. So looking at it from an outside perspective, I I don't think Hubert Davis is the guy. I think that's kind of been shown.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's had a lot of anomalies with the national championship run. That was a complete anomaly. But I don't I don't think he's the guy. But is the grass always greener? Like if you
That's
fire him,
true.
it's not guaranteed you get like Nate Oates or TJ Otterberger. So that's kind of my big thing right now. That's why I'm a little. I don't think Hubert Davis is the guy, yes, but I don't know if UNC would make the right hire at this exact
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fear of unknown kind of factor. Like you want to get them out of there, but you don't know who you've got.
Yeah.
And like with that extension, I mean, I know they signed it back in the summer and they announced it like a couple weeks ago for whatever reason. Could they even like contractually be able to fire him right now? Like I don't. Obviously, we're not lawyers or anything, so it's not really for us to explain. But like I would imagine they're probably going to stick with him for at least one more year just because of that.
Yeah. So supposedly what I was told, not that I have sources, but I was just asking other UNC fans. They were saying
Mm.
that that got announced, and with it being announced that the buyout decreased a little bit to buy him out
Oh,
if they do go that route, which is a possibility in the coming
interesting.
year. Which, I still
Yeah.
think it was very weird to announce that, though.
So you think we'll end the UNC talk here, but let's say this is the course of action for the ACC tournament. They go out against Duke in the semifinals. You would have to imagine on Selection Sunday they're not going to be hearing their name called. Do you think that
No.
they cut Hubert loose?
It's a good question because we just saw what NC State did. They fired Kevin Keats, and they just made the Final Four last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a possibility, honestly, because if there's a big name that they're back channeling through, and they hear, hey, I want to go to North Carolina, I'd love to coach this program. I think you might have to take the gamble, cut Hubert loose, and hire that guy, that whoever it is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, I mean, I just feel like with the comments that have been made, they've said they're going to hire a general manager or whatever to help him out, kind of, and he's got the high-profile recruit that he wanted, Caleb Wilson, coming in. I just feel like they're in a situation where they almost look bad if they don't give him one more shot at it. But at the same time, I don't think that's what's best for their program right now. Like, if I'm the athletic director at UNC, if he doesn't make the tournament, he's out of there, in my opinion. If I'm making that decision, that's what I do. And you know who I would go after if I was a UNC fan? I mentioned this on a separate video with Blake. I don't think you were here for, but you know who I would give a call if I was the head at UNC?
If I had to take a guess, I'd say Nate Oates, who I already mentioned.
Todd Golden.
Okay.
What do you
the
think about
legal
that
troubles
one?
are done. Todd Golden would be a great hire. The problem is, though, like, he might be set in Florida, though.
Yeah, that's the
hey,
argument. That's the argument I made at the time because I was talking to Blake when we made that video like a month ago now, and we said like, what would it take for them to just fire him completely? And it's the scenario we're looking at right now. And I threw Todd Golden out as like, he's a young, innovative mind. You go and try and get him, but at the same time, I mean, he's really already made at a basketball school like Florida, where he's going to have the resources. He's got the prestige behind him from the past of that program, and I think he's in a spot where he may not leave Florida unless he was to get like an NBA job. But if you're looking for a very lucrative hire, I think that's who I would go for.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you at all. I think that'd be a great option. But like I said, I think the problem is for North Carolina, if they were to go to that route, he is in the SEC at Florida, and they have a lot of resources that they'd be willing to give Todd Golden, just like a lot of other SEC schools.
Yeah, they'd be able to go band for band with UNC if things gotten into like a money conversation, but
especially
that'll
when
conclude.
UNC's on AL.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll conclude it, though. We'll conclude
that'll conclude the spiel on North Carolina. Moving on to the other semifinal, the one we think is most likely to happen, the 2-seed Louisville Cardinals versus the 3-seeded Clemson Tigers. Sully, this is probably what I would say would be the first really good game of the ACC tournament. I mean, I know Duke and UNC, it brings the headlines, but from a pure just roster-on-roster perspective, I think Louisville and Clemson has the potential to be one of the best matchups because there's been conversations, obviously, about the ACC. These teams, as a whole, it's very top-heavy with Duke, Louisville, and Clemson. How well-tested are these teams heading into the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament? And, I mean, these are two of the best besides Duke going at it right here. If there's a chance to prove what they're made of, this is the time to make a name for themselves as we head into Selection Sunday.
Yeah, so I do agree. I think this is definitely the best game that should come in the ACC tournament unless something crazy happens. But I'm going to move on to the pick real quick. I'm going to take Clemson already. My thing is Louisville. I still think Louisville is a very good team, but they've been struggling a little bit. They were in a very tight game with the Virginia Tech team that I don't think is that good. They did just beat Cal, I believe it was, recently, kind of beat up on them a little bit. But I'm a little skeptic. They haven't really seen a good team in a while, like Clemson. And then if they do win that, like Duke, but that's a whole world of a different team. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with Clemson. I think Chase Hunter, I think he is one of the most underrated players in the country. That dude is a baller. And I think this Duke-Clemson championship game should probably be what they're hoping for, considering this is Duke's only loss in the ACC.
I have some questions about Louisville's strength of schedule. They've had a phenomenal year. Pat Kelsey, I don't want to undermine anything he's done. This is probably the best case scenario for a first year that you could ask for if you're a Louisville fan. No complaints whatsoever. However, when it comes to opponents played, there really is kind of a question there. as to the quality of the wins that they've gotten. Whereas Clemson, we've seen them do it against Duke. Granted, it was at Little John, which is a big help. But I think that kind of experience behind them and just having more of a known product with Clemson that can go out there and compete with the best of the best, I think that's why I'm going to pick Clemson here as well. And I do think that this sets up probably the best kind of matchup you could ask for over in the ACC. Rematch of one of Duke's
100%.
few losses. You get to see if Clemson can really live up to the talent level once again and see if they're going to be taken serious heading into the NCAA tournament. But with all that in mind, Sully, Duke, Clemson, this is our final that we're picking. What do we think happens in the rematch?
Yeah, Duke gets their get back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I'm thinking is UNC would be in that spot.
Oh,
So
yeah.
help
Let's
me,
talk
so I
about
respect
that. Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's act like the trump card didn't happen. What do you think happens if it's UNC Clemson?
I'm taking UNC. I really there's been a bid stealer out of the ACC the past couple of seasons, and I'm sticking with it. You had NC State last year. You had that Virginia Tech team against the Apollo Duke, and then the North Carolina team that made the championship. And they Virginia Tech of all teams, somehow came out of that and won. But yeah, if UNC hypothetically was to make it and to play Clemson or Louisville in the championship game, and ours Clemson, I would take UNC because I think at that point you kind of have to win it all.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have it on the record that Sully's actual pick would be the North Carolina Tar Heels. Mine is going to be the Duke Blue Devils. I think they get the best of Clemson in the rematch, and I think they claim the ACC championship there. Got to feel good about themselves heading into March. This is probably going to lock them in at what I would think would be the second overall 1 seed, maybe pending other results in the Big 12 with a team like Houston or how Alabama and Florida evolve in the SEC tournament. But let's say here, just to close this out, Sully, Duke runs the table. They win this conference. What do you think on Selection Sunday when it comes to that 1 seed line? I mean, even if they were to lose to UNC, like you said, they're not going to drop off the 1 seed line. But if they go and win this whole thing, what do we think in the hierarchy of the 1 seeds? Where's that going to land them at? Do you think they get the second overall one next to Auburn? Do they get the third or the fourth? I kind of feel like it depends on what the other teams on that 1 seed line do. And at the same time, I also don't know how much the selection committee values these conference tournaments because that has been kind of a question in the past, how much that factors into their overall judgment. But if Duke takes this whole thing, what do we think they head into the NCAA tournament as?
So it all depends on what happens with Auburn because, like you said, the committee doesn't really care about the championship games unless it's a bid stealer, of course. So if Auburn wins their first game, which I don't know their bracket off the top of my head, I can't lie, and we don't even need to look into that because it's the ACC. If Auburn, I think, gets to the SEC championship, they're automatically the number 1 overall seed, even with what Duke does here and just runs the table. But if Auburn doesn't, I would take Duke as the number 1 overall team.
Yeah, I could see the vision for that for sure, especially if Auburn were to go out and like the first game they play on that Friday, they're going to have the winner. I know it off the top of my head. They're either going to get Ole Miss, Arkansas, or South Carolina with the way their little chunk of the brackets going over there. So, hey, maybe Cal makes a legacy run and they take out Auburn. Talk about a way to put yourself in the field safely. That would be a storyline.
Yeah, that would be nuts.
Yeah,
because he's been coaching. He's been coaching awesome recently.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's people saying it's the best job he's ever done as a coach. I'm not sure what I feel about that, but I mean, he has done a good job in turning that roster around. But as far as the ACC goes, this is the full court trap bracket. You see it right here in all of its glory. If Sully had it his way, we would be shifting UNC with Duke over here. I can't get the technology to work, but you get what I'm saying. Sully has the Tar Heels taking this. I use my trump card, and we're going to give it to the Blue Devils. But yeah, should be do we want to call this an exciting tournament, Sully? Because I really want to buy in that we're going to get some good matchups here. But I mean, when I look at this, it just feels like Louisville and Clemson might be the only one that really brings any excitement out of me, unless we get this Duke-Clemson final.
I mean, college basketball in general is always exciting to me. So at least this tournament style will be exciting, even though the quality of teams is not the best in the ACC, to be completely honest.